Hi everyone. I did my project on enhancing comprehension through multiple meaning, multi-component vocabulary instruction. Big title, but what it means is that when we teach vocabulary of words that have more than one meaning in a multi-sensory, multi-component fashion, incorporating some of the things we've learned about comprehension along the way, like syntax and semantics and how they all fold together, we can enhance the outcome of comprehension of our students. Where does all of this fit? The big picture on the research started out with Joshi from 2005, who called a well-developed vocabulary a prerequisite for fluent reading, a critical link between decoding and comprehension. There's a strong causal relationship in the research, and better vocabulary knowledge leads children to define words in more general and abstract terms. This is usually something that only happens with good readers. Poor readers tend to define terms only in the context in which they've seen them, and they don't take that knowledge and generalize it. Beck and Graham determined using rich contextual direct vocabulary instruction improves semantic integration and reading comprehension in students. So in other words, they can take that word and they can see it in one context and use it in another. When you add a vocabulary component to another exercise like incremental rehearsal, Brown and Burns found that it enhances retention and generalization of the words that were learned. So polysemy, we just learned about that a week or two ago. It means multi-meaning words. Words or phrases that can mean more than one thing. Assetti and Wang studied polysemy and metacognitive strategy instruction with a small population of deaf students. They found that students increased both their vocabulary and their comprehension, and not only that, but they were able to transfer the knowledge that, hey, this word is a multi-meaning word, so maybe this one that I haven't seen is also a multi-meaning word. Garcia incorporated polysemy instruction in their high school and college classes. These were teachers that were taking advanced level courses, and they went back and used some of what they had learned and what they had talked about in their own classes to see how their students would respond. So they used it in context, they taught it within the frame of a poem or a story, and then their students either had to create one of their own or had to see that those words took meaning and be able to extrapolate from that. While it wasn't what I would consider robust research in terms of a control group or anything like that, it was more of a bit of a case study. They did notice an increase in word awareness after the lessons in their students. Now, RAVO was designed by Marianne Wolf to combat rapid naming deficiencies and processing issues that are often seen in students with dyslexia. They completed numerous studies, she and her colleagues from Tufts, on a multi-component intervention program over the course of about 10 years. This was done in numerous settings, whether it was after-school program, an intensive summer program. RAVO stands for Retrieval, Automaticity, Vocabulary, Elaboration, and Orthography. It takes all of the components that we've been learning about in our courses and with Orton Gillingham and puts them into a nice semi-scripted program. It was initially designed to help those with rapid naming deficiencies and maybe treat those kids that were known as resistors to the typical phonological treatment. It connects the neuroscience to the practice of teaching, and it does that by taking these discrete areas of the brain and teaching specific concepts in a specific way that helps build connections among the systems. So the more a child knows about a word, the faster he or she can retrieve it. RAVO outperformed phonological-only programs on all measures and was superior to another multifaceted program, FAST, on vocabulary and fluency comprehension acquisition in an NICHD sponsored study that was completed and published in 2012. And it was done across IQ measures, across socioeconomic status, and in 3 very different places from Georgia to Toronto. They had groups of students being tested in this. There was a control group that received no phonological instruction. They got math help. There was another group that was phonological only, so a phonics program, but it was multisensory. And then there were 2 others, the multifaceted programs, FAST and RAVO. RAVO and FAST outperformed the other 2 groups. But again, RAVO was the winner in terms of vocabulary and fluency comprehension acquisition. So how do we implement this? Well, there's 2 ways. One is with a program like RAVO, where it's semi-scripted for you. It has a set sequence and it integrates all of the other components like semantics, syntax, phonology with the multi-meaning vocabulary. It was designed for a small group or one-on-one, specifically for grades 2 to 3, but has been studied in grades 2 to 5 for students that have rapid naming deficiencies on a RAND-RAS test, or for ones who don't perform well on the fluency aspect of DIBELS. Words progress over 16 units, from simple CVC to ones that have prefixes and suffixes. And the reason that it starts out so simple is to build those little success stories. The students that we want to target with RAVO tend to be accustomed to failure, so we want to make sure that they know how to decode already some of those simple words and then say, hey, let's build on this. All words have at least 3 meanings. Materials include image cards for the meanings, minute readers, posters to reinforce metacognitive strategies, and exit tickets and assessments. So to give you an idea of what some of these things look like, here's image cards for the word lap. Okay, so we can see that it has the 4 meanings: laptop, lapping, a lap around the track, and the lap that you sit on. Posters and word wall cards, and what these do is just give the student, that relief from trying to remember things right off the bat, and they're just the reminders in a nice colorful way. You have the Think Thrice, the Enderbenders, Jam Slam for the phonology, Rhyme Time, and of course the word wall cards to build as you go through all of the lessons. Here was another poster that just didn't get included, but one that really helped my student out, the sentence builder, showing all of the parts that we need to make a sentence, starting out with the basics, nouns and verbs. So the words are based on high-frequency rhyme patterns. It's multisensory phonological intro to each word. You elicit meanings using image cards and questioning. They're called MIMS. And create a word web called Many Interesting Connections. So for example, if I had the word jam, I'd want the students to make connections to sweet, or the color of the jam, or that it's sticky, to help, again, build those brain connections. It's explicit and direct, multisensory. It includes syntactic and metacognitive instruction. Then we have independent instruction. So if you don't want to go the route of a boxed curriculum, you can do this type of instruction independently. And when you do it independently, it can be adapted for a whole class, a small group, or one-on-one. You choose from high-frequency words, roots, or morphemes. Make sure that your choice is based on age and decoding ability, because again, we want to build those small success stories. Choose 2 words per lesson and create a unit study. It can take as many lessons as it needs to, depending on the RTI tier, the needs of the students, and the number of word meanings. Create your word web. Use a combination of direct instruction and brainstorming to determine multiple meanings. Use images or props. Derive those word families again and create word connections. So for example, for build, you can have Legos, structures, machines, architecture, etc. Given simple sentences using the chosen words, have students identify word syntactic usage. Have them tell you whether it's a noun, a verb, or an adjective. Read a couple of passages with your students and have them be word detectives to identify the key word and state the meaning that's being used. And use exit tickets for assessment. So some recommendations that I ran into as I was implementing this with some of my students is I like to combine the independent instruction and the RAVO approaches as I needed to. So when I did this with a whole class of first graders, I made sure that I had copies of all of the pictures and I had them arrange the pictures and categorize them with the word that they went with after we went over the many interesting meanings to see if they could retain that. And then I also had them create some sentences for me and do that on a bonus point basis to see how many meanings they could fit in one sentence. When in doubt, always start with the basics. When I was doing this one-on-one, you don't realize sometimes how much a kid is missing until you start working with them one-on-one. And I worked with my daughter and noticed that some of the things, because she had missed out on a lot of it in first grade because she was so busy trying to learn how to decode, that she really couldn't identify what a noun or a verb was. So we really had to go back and start from the basics. Assessment and progress monitoring, again, you can have them create their own sentences using the target words. You can create sentences yourself and have students choose the appropriate meaning or a syntactic usage in them on either a closed assessment if you want a more formal assessment with choices of the definitions. And you can also use the RAVO exit tickets and unit assessments that come with it. So references and resources. For more information on RAVO, you can go to the Tufts website, which has some video on RAVO as well, or Voyager Sopris has some training and also delineates all of the various parts that are incorporated into RAVO. And some of the studies that I go more into on the sheets that we have to provide for everyone rather than on the presentation, but some of these studies that looked at multi-component vocabulary instruction, it's really that semantic integration. It's being able to connect those parts, and you can do it for content vocabulary as well. When you're doing that differentiated instruction, when you're doing that independent instruction as opposed to RAVO, once your students are ready for it, or if you want to do it with kids that are not in grades 1 through 5 but in middle school or high school, you can use roots, you can build on it and use content vocabulary, anything that may have more than one meaning. And as they get older, they can integrate it more into sentence format as opposed to just at the word level. When you're in first grade, some of the research has shown that the improvements only occur at the word level. They can only transfer that knowledge so far. Once they get up into third and especially fifth grade, they can transfer it on more of a sentence level, and then eventually a passage level for what could this possibly mean a little bit differently, incorporating some of those metaphorical usages as well. So list of references and resources. Again, I encourage you to check out the Voyager Sopris one. It has a video of RAVO in use too.